100 pixels. Now let's just take these style attributes, and for making it quicker, let's just copy them down here, and then we're going to edit some of these values. So for left column, let's just change the color here to F00, and let's offset it down 100 pixels. We'll leave it on the left at 0 pixels. Let's make the width 150 pixels. This is our navigation column on the left, and let's make the height 500 pixels. And down to the content, and we'll make this color FFF. Make the top 100 because it's at the same level as the left column. Make it a width of 700 and a height of 500. Then for our footer section, let's leave the background color of that, and let's put the top at 600 because it has to be down below both the content and the header. Left stays at 0, width is 800 pixels because we want it all the way across the screen, and we'll leave it the same height as the header at 100 pixels. So that looks good. We need to go back over here to our page, and we'll put a link from the cascading style sheet to the page here by dragging and dropping the cascading style sheet. And I just recalled there was one more thing we want to change over here in the cascading style sheet. I see that we left the left value at 0, so that would put the content right on top of the left column. So let's make that 150 so it's out to the right. So it should be all set. Let's fire up the page here and take a look at what we have. And it is what we expected. Let me make this just a little bit bigger. And you can see we have our header up here, which is at the 800 pixels, our left column, our content, and down the bottom we have our footer. So we've been able to use absolute positioning here to get a pretty nice standard page layout. And we've done that back here by separating the design of the page into the cascading style sheet, and the actual HTML is rather simple. Now this isn't bad, but let's say we want to add a right-hand column as well as a left-hand column. What do we have to do? Now typically what I would do is just add the right column right here on the same page, but what I'm going to do is just quickly create a second page so when you get the sample code you have this first one intact. So add a new style sheet and page here, so I'll call this div layout 2. And let's add another page, and we'll call that one div layout 2 as well. Then what I'm going to do is go over to the first page, and I'm just going to take all of this HTML right down with a head and body tag, and we're going to go over here to this and paste it in. So this will speed up what we're doing here. And then we're going to go back to the first cascading style sheet, copy everything there, go back over to the second cascading style sheet and paste it in. Now let me just clean up things here by closing a few of these windows. And we'll get rid of the original table one and this default ASPX as well. So first thing we need to do is add our right hand column in the HTML. So let's just take our left column, copy it, paste it in here, and all we need to do is rename it in the text and also here in the ID. Now let's go over to our CSS file and take the left column style. We'll copy and paste that. We'll use that as the basis for our right hand column. Now our header in our left column will stay as is, and then the right column, all we'll do is make its left value to be 650, and in fact let's just leave the content at 500, so that stays the same in this case, and the footer is staying the same as well. Now let's take a look at the page. Open it up in the browser here, and now we have our right hand column. So it was quite easy to add another column to our layout. We really just added the div to the page and added another cascading style sheet, and not much more than that. So in both this first and second example, we've been using absolute positioning of our divs on the page. Now let's make a third page, and this time we're going to use the float style attribute to get the divs to float next to one another on the page rather than absolutely positioning them. So I'm going to go ahead here and create a new style and a new page. Let's do the page first here. So this would be div layout 3. And we would create a corresponding style sheet, and we'll call this div layout 3. And let's just copy the HTML over from number 2. And as I said, I'm doing this just so when you get the sample code, you're going to have all these different approaches as separate entities, whereas typically we could just edit the one page. So we'll go down here, we'll paste in the HTML there, and let's go back to the 2 and take the cascading style, go back over here to 3, paste that in, and let's just go over here to 3 and take our new cascading style sheet, put in a link to that there. We're going to close down our number 2 pages. Now we don't have to do anything to the HTML, and we're just going to edit the cascading style sheet. So this is an example of how the design aspect is really quite separate from the HTML. So the first thing I want to do here is, because we're not going to absolute position anymore, I want to add a body element and set a couple attributes. So I'll add the body in here, and I want to set the margin to 0 pixels and the padding to 0 pixels. Then we're going to go down to the header, and we're going to get rid of the absolute positioning and just let it flow inline. Since it's the first HTML element, it will naturally be at the top of the page. We're going to go down and take out the positioning for the left column, and in its place we're going to put the float element or attribute, which will float our element to the left in this case. So what the float does is it causes the left column to float or stick to the left side of the page. And we're going to take that and we're going to do the same thing for the right column and the same thing for the content. Now down here we'll take out the absolute positioning for the footer as well, but what we want here is the clear attribute. And what the clear attribute does is it says, okay, let's clear any float attributes that have been set in previous elements, because the float attributes build successively on one another. Okay, let's fire up and look at the page in the browser. And there's the page. Has a very similar look to when we did the absolute layout, but we're floating the left content and right columns. So using the float attribute is an improvement because we have somewhat less code, so to speak, over in the cascading style sheet. So everything's a little smaller, but we're still dealing with fixed width columns. How would we create a column-based layout where they were more fluid, or as the term is, liquid, where the width of the columns would change as we resize the browser, or more importantly, as users who are running the page at different resolutions have different widths available on their screen, and they would get the